Okay, thank you for your attention, everyone, and welcome to the session. My name is Sean McMurtry. I'm from Edmonton, Alberta, and proudly presenting on behalf of the CCMF Alberta team, what is, I think, a kind of labor of love for us. The talk's entitled Values, Culture, and Effective Social Services for Men. Advance the slide, please. Thank you. So men face a disparately high set of adverse social outcomes. I've shared Canadian data from the federal government for suicide here. And as you can see, men versus women form the bulk of completed suicides in our country. And I could have shared almost any adverse social outcome. Deaths from opioids, deaths from other addictions, homelessness, not being in one's children's lives, poverty, anything. The findings are more or less the same. Men face a disparately high burden of adverse social outcomes, and importantly, also mental health problems. Compared with women, though, they have very few services available to them. I looked for a graphic that would capture this, and this is the homepage for the federal government's Ministry for Women and Gender Equality. And if you have a look at that, I think you get, in a nutshell, where we stand in Canada from a cultural perspective in terms of social services available for men. The focus clearly is on women, and that's at the level of the federal government, provincial governments, as well as municipal governments and communities. And while it is, of course, important to make sure that women in need have the services that they require, we have not yet arrived at an equitable Canada where everybody is receiving the services that they require. Why is that? Cultural reasons play a role, we believe. They may contribute to why men's suffering is not acknowledged or addressed in the public sphere. Contributing cultural beliefs that we've seen over and over again include ideas that men are the source of their problems, men are privileged and not needing support, and then a tendency to believe or behave that men are somehow disposable and their suffering matters less. What does this look like? Often the idea of men as the source of the problem is coached in a framework of masculinity, that somehow they're not good enough. And that's pernicious in that it puts the locus of responsibility for that man's problems clearly on him and doesn't understand all of the things that he may face. The idea that men are privileged and not needing support, I mean, it's obvious. We see it in the level of social supports that men have at every level of government, as I've touched on before. And then a tendency to believe or behave as men are disposable. I'll show you an example of that, but it's everywhere also. This is an example I just clipped from the internet of something that we would see as a pernicious attack on male identity that contributes to there being an unwillingness of men to seek support in that environment or an ineffectiveness of that environment to meet a man's needs. You can't help someone if you don't approach them with understanding and compassion and without a preconceived framework of where they went wrong. And I chose this as an example of how men are viewed as disposable in our society. This is the cover of the federal government's report on murdered and missing women and girls. And as we heard earlier in the conference, there were, in the same time period, 3 times as many murdered and missing Indigenous boys and men. They don't appear in this document. And our government, our federal government and social services agency don't give those victims, those human beings who are valuable, as much voice as they have these women. And again, this message is not about critiquing, bringing a voice to the suffering of these murdered and missing Indigenous women. It's saying that there are other people too who are suffering that deserve a voice. So what have we done to counter these negative cultural ideas? While CCMF Alberta is a nascent social services agency located in Calgary, Alberta that serves the province, we're part of the Canadian Centre of Men and Families family that started here in Ontario. And from March 2020 to March 2022, we conducted a series of exercises to develop organizational values to inform our work and directly counter these negative cultural ideas. Exercises that we went through included a modified Delphi conference. If you don't know what that is, that's a series of experts who are collected, who are presented with questions about what values should be included, that goes through iteratively to generate a list of things that should be included in the final set. We used that and measured it against what clients told us in focus group interviews with structured questions. We took that information and had a meeting, a session with our volunteers, a tri-building day, to again hash out what it was we believed in and thought would be most effective, and then filtered that through still more online surveys of clients participating in our CCMF Alberta programs. And we synthesized this by volunteers into a proprietary framework called Traction, which is used for business development. And there's nothing fancy about it, but that's the framework that we used. So what did we come up with? Our purpose at CCMF Alberta is the following: empowering men and families to build better futures. That's what we're about. Clearly, it's on empowerment. It's not about critiquing, fault finding, cajoling to be better. It's about helping people where they're at, make their own lives better by supporting their own agency. Our core values included being warm, welcoming, and caring always, recognizing the intrinsic value of every individual, being dedicated and collaborative, forward-thinking and collaborative, and then intentional. Sorry, that's a spelling error on my part. This, I think, is really where the money is at. Our niche is compassion, belonging, and agency for men. And I want to say that again: compassion, belonging, and agency for men. What does that mean? If we're going to listen with compassion, we do not listen within a framework of a preconceived idea of somebody's masculinity or what they should do. We listen to them, we hear their story, we don't make fun of them, we don't tell them where they went wrong, we don't victim blame for them having problems, but listen and then try to lend a helping hand. The next is belonging. So many of our clients tell us that everyone else they've talked to or turned to for help, they just haven't felt heard, they don't feel like they belong. And to build a place, safe space, I don't like that term, but psychologically safe space for them to share their story, feel like they're not the only one, talk openly about their challenges without fear of critique, that's essential. And then the final piece is where the magic is: supporting their agency. We don't fix people, we help people identify their challenges, match them up with possible solutions, and support them on their journey for making their own lives better. So what are our unique selling features that distinguish us from competitor agencies, to the extent there are any? Our clients feel heard. We create a community for our clients and our people. And our niche, our propensity to provide compassion, belonging, and agency for men, that's what stands us in good stead and will help us succeed in this space. Our process, just to fill out the rest of the Traction rubric, is we listen to our clients with compassion. We help identify problems and connect them with solutions to help realize a better life with our ongoing support. Conclusion: so effective social services for men are possible, and their time has come. And for them to work, they must be imbued with appropriate values and organizational culture in order to be effective. And I think that there are some implications for us as a social services agency as we move forward, but also call to action to all of you people, that men who struggle should be treated with compassion and without shaming. And if we come at them with a preconceived framework of masculinity or ideas of why they might have their problem, or an encouragement to be better, we really should check ourselves and make sure that we're listening first, listening with compassion and treating that individual who's suffering as a human being. Second, conversations about negative social issues should include the best local data about how those issues affect men as well as women. I mean, to give you an example of how hard this is, we heard from the MP Karen Vecchio about family violence in Canada. Well, the statistics she shared today was that 85% of it is affecting women. What she failed to say is that that is ascertained by police report. And she did not quote Dr. Lysova's work, for example, that when ascertained by questionnaire, by actually going out and finding out what's going on in people's lives, it's actually about equal. And we have to be unwilling to have conversations that don't include all of the data. And we have to cajole and encourage our partners across the spectrum to start having these complete conversations. And then finally, social services and interventions to address social problems should address the needs of men and women equitably. Men are equity-seeking groups too, and we're not there yet. And so please join with us at CCMF Alberta, and let's make a better tomorrow. Thank you very much.